Erica, it is coincidence that Julie and I were in the same shirt.
Oh, darn it. I
I'm
should
like,
have worn my
Yeah, it's. I mean, we're not. It's really not the same shirt, it's just the same color, and it really is
is
coincidence. It
really
has
similar.
nothing to do
yeah,
with anything. We did not consult each
no.
other first. Not
I
at
went to
all.
a craft fair today, so I wanted to wear a bright color so I didn't get lost in the crowd.
Smart.
Yep.
Very smart.
So, all right. So we're going to talk with Erica today about NPC archetypes
Oh, yeah.
because it's of interest to her and perhaps all of us.
NPCs are super interesting.
So
They're not just vending machines.
they're not. Well, they can be interesting. They can be boring. The important thing is that they are what they are. Should be. They are what they are by design. Okay.
For the
So
part.
let me start by saying that your NPC can be ally, it can be foe, they can be a minor, major, but the important thing is that they want to be by design. You have to prepare them ahead of time and not on the fly. Occasionally there'll be something on the fly because they're not that important. If they're not that important, then it doesn't really matter. But if it's going to be an
Well, that's
NPC,
a trick, though.
what's that?
That's kind of tricky because if the players realize that you're making something up on the fly, that's a signal that is not important,
Well, that,
right?
what,
So
what,
why would they
right. Well,
pay any
and that's what I'm
attention?
saying. So if it's important, then you kind of should prepare that a little bit ahead of time. Now, if it's
Yeah.
the local shopkeep or something, yeah, they're probably not going to be that important of an NPC in the overall game for that campaign or the story arc or whatever.
The
But
shopkeep?
if they are, then you want to prep for that. Now, I'll admit, and Erica, you know this firsthand. On Sundays, the local provisioner has become an interesting character, a fun NPC for the party to interact with. Does
I've
he
seen
have
that
a
happen a couple of
significant
times,
role?
actually.
No, he doesn't really have a significant role. He's not pushing you guys ahead. He's not giving you all kinds of local law or anything. But he's comic relief is what he is, and that is essentially one of our archetypes. And
The
then you
comic relief.
have a few other characters that have been identified there at the keep and such, but some are more important than others, and therefore some are more kind of fleshed out than others. But I will say that provisioner, Kanan, I think his name is, or Tiam, something like that. Um,
Ian,
he was not. I didn't put any effort into him other than a name, and he just kind of evolved to with our social interactions to be a comic relief kind of archetype of an NPC. But if you are in your prep, if you know or you as the DM want this character, this NPC to have this particular role, then you need to prep that ahead of time. You,
mhm.
you really
Unless
do.
your party throws you a curveball and you have to like finagle an important NPC out of nowhere. I've had to do that
Well, but even
to
at
put them
that,
back on
but
track.
even at that, so if you have if you have this item, right, that it's important or it'd be nice for the party to find, and it's over here in this room, and the party never makes it to that room, that's okay. I want to take that and I want to replant it over here 2 weeks later, a month later, whatever. So you can kind of do the same thing with the NPC. So if you have created this NPC who's going to be the mentor for the party, and they don't really interact with the mentor, or they don't take the bait, then you just take those characteristics and drop it over here to this NPC that they have chosen to interact with. So the personality might be different than what you had intended because they're going with this NPC versus that one, but the role of that NPC can still be implanted in this NPC they're interacting with.
I
Their
really
job.
like what she had said about I will use the NPC to get my characters back on track. One of the most useful things an
I've
NPC
done it.
can do is help manage your pacing. You can throw them in there to be like, look, you have all been in this store now for 3 sessions. We need to move on. Obviously,
The
pacing
shop can't
is
check
going
them out. Yeah.
exactly. Like the pacing is going to depend heavily on what kind of game you're playing. If you're playing a one shot, you need to move, right? You got to get through this. The store's going to close or the conference is going to end or what have you. And you want to make sure to hit all the big important fun parts so that the players have the parts that they remember. But also you could have a campaign too where spending 3 sessions in the store might be what your players want to do, but you might have to use an NPC to help. Hey, look, there's a door to this store. It leads outside.
So
Let's
at the
let's
very
go
least,
check that
though,
out.
so at the very least, in your prep for that session or for the campaign, right? The NPCs which you know are going to be of have some sort of role, you have to have a name because you don't want to be doing that on the fly,
Yes.
right? Because they're important enough, they need a name. They
Yeah.
need a stat block, maybe. It doesn't mean to be a full stat block, right? Because they're probably not going to engage in combat. Let's hope not. But a stat
You might
block in
want to
terms of
know
what might be
some
relevant, right? So maybe they need
passive
an
perception.
intelligence store, right? An intelligence score or a wisdom score, something to that effect for some of those kind of checks that you might do, sleight of hand or perception check, things like that. You have to have something for their physical appearance, whether it be just
Mhm.
clothing, a scar, they're average, even if it's just, hey, they're kind of an average looking guy, blonde hair, what something to kind of describe, because that unto itself is going to draw attention from the players, right? We talked about that before about the chest, right? The more you talk about it, the more it's probably going to get their attention.
And
So,
it's part of the biosphere. Like
correct,
you are fleshing out the details of what they see.
right?
What organisms are in this space?
And but again, it's because of time management. You're going to flesh out what's important, right? You're not going to flesh out every single NPC in the town. Oh my God, why? They're not going to interact with two-thirds of them or 80% of them. So why flesh them all out? You know, they have a
Nope.
title,
You only need
like farmer
major
number one, farmer number two. Maybe you give them a name, so you don't have to kind of do that on the fly. But
and a personality point. They're grouchy.
right, right, right.
They're
Okay,
flirty.
and that was
They're,
that was the next
one
thing I was going to
personality
say,
point.
right? So you give them a name, you give them a stat block, although abbreviated, describe their appearance or have that prepared, and then like my next bullet point on that was like personality, like how are they going to behave, and if you have a voice for them, because you can do that, you need to take note of that as well. So when they come back in 2 months and revisit this NPC, you know, you want to kind of at least come close to recreating that voice again, especially knowing that depending upon your group of players, they might remember that voice that you don't
Yes,
if you don't
certainly.
jot it down. Okay, there are some groups of players who remember nothing and take no notes, and others who remember every little detail that you don't remember. And the
Hmm.
last thing I have noted in terms of your basic fleshing out of this NPC is like what drives them, what motivates them. Is it money as
Their
as
goals.
the shopkeeper, right? Um, is it that hey they're just a do-gooder and they just want to like help out everyone? They're just really nice, whatever it is. But I don't think you need to go so far as to have an entire backstory for an NPC, at least not from the get-go. If they're going to be an
Not from the
important
get-go.
NPC or like a real major NPC, especially a long-lasting NPC, then maybe have a
That'll be
little bit
part of
of
the
a
storytelling.
background. But even at that, for me, being very much a improv theater of the mind, I might have the motivation, their money, right? My shopkeeper, and then
Right. Yeah.
I'll just roll with it. I don't need a background. You ask a question, and then if I think yeah he knows about that, then I'll give you something on it. And now he has a background that has organically come into play versus me having creating it or previous, and therefore that kind of locks me in or more inclined to lock me in because I created it. I said this is what this NPC is going to be, and I think most people when they do that they're not going to be very lenient or flexible on that. But if I omit it altogether from the start and then when we role play it out, that's when that happens. Just like I tell
But it
my
gives
play.
the agency to the players to decide how much they want to know about this person. And
Correct.
you don't have to waste your time building all of that if they aren't going to bother asking. And that frees up time for you to take care of other
Other
more
things,
important
right?
things. You also
Right.
get to know your players.
So
If you've got a player that asks about every NPC and wants to know if they're married, if they've got kids, like your players. So you should be pretty comfortable prepping your stuff for your players essentially. Um, but yeah, the NPCs are another aspect of the group storytelling. I think you don't have to have their backstory done. You can use the table and the adventures and the encounters to let the backstory unfold like it does for your characters.
correct. And I've told you that before, Erica. I've told all my players that if you want to create a backstory to help you kind of define your character and how you want to role play your character, that's fine. But it's perfectly okay to not have it, and you just kind of roll, you kind of ad lib, right? You improv, and you role play your character as you feel it in the moment. And over 5, 10, 50 weeks, that character starts to develop its own personality, and based upon that,
It does.
something came up, right? And therefore, that, oh yeah, that came from my background. I used to do that when I was younger, and it just kind of happens, right? So those are the
I
5 things
remember
I
I
think
was
that.
disappointed when I rolled for the first edition for our game.
Oh, you froze. Okay, and let me pause my video then and allow her to come back. Did it pause? Let's try again. Okay, and we're back after Erica froze. Okay,
Excellent.
so let me go back to my full screen. So, all right, so
NPCs as a guide.
so 5 bullet points, essentially what I'm saying as to what you should kind of flesh out in your NPCs, even a minor NPC, in your prep, and that is they need a name, maybe they need a stat block, probably abbreviated. They don't need a full stat block, unless it's the villain, right? The big bad evil guy. That might be different. What they look like, what they're wearing, physical features, something to kind of add flavor to tell the players what their character sees. Maybe a personality trait, behavior. And then what kind of motivates them, right? Are they just want to do good? They motivated by money? Are they motivated by um, greed? Are they motivated by their religion? Whatever it is, because then that kind of will gear you as the DM as to how you're going to role play this NPC, and therefore what kind of information they may have for the PCs, the player characters, and what kind of information. Yeah, so those are the basic 5, I think, right? To kind of get started. Now, the NPCs will have different roles, or the important ones are going to have different roles for the party, for the players. Erica, I think you're frozen again. Going to have different roles for the party. I'm not talking the title of what their job is in the city or town or castle where they are found and interact with the the player characters, but so they may have a title, right? They may have the title Captain of the Watch, Smithy, Trader, Provisioner, Seaboat Captain, whatever it might be. So those are the titles of the character's job, but their archetype, their function in the game itself, when they interact with the player characters, will be a little different, right? And that's what we're talking about today, the different archetypes. Now, I'm sure we can probably come up with a dozen different archetypes of player or NPCs, and there'll be a lot of overlap. All depends how you want to title your NPC archetypes. But I have 7 or 8 here that I have noted that I'm going to kind of bring up for our discussion. You've already alluded to a couple of them, Erica. One being that like the motivator, or the guide, and so on. I mentioned about comic relief. So the first one that I have noted is just that, the guide. Okay, now, and the guide, in a sense, will serve or can serve various functions. One being helping the DM with pacing, right? And pacing, as you said, is so, my God, so important when you're doing a one shot. Because you're usually a very confined amount of time, a predetermined amount of time, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and then we're done. Because the convention is over, the the shop is closing, people got to go home, whatever it is. So one of the functions of the guide is to aid the DM with pacing, to kind of move the party along, okay? To kind of speed up that travel. It can actually be a physical guide. They can guide the party from point A to point B, city A to city B. They can act like a travel guide as well. They can, but that's really not quite what we're thinking here. But they help to move the party along, to move the story along. They might have some local insights, um, local lore, maybe. They can, depending how you use them, create a little suspense, a little tension as to what's going on locally. Um, but they definitely can be used, I think, in those two primary functions: to move the game along and to physically aid the party in travel from point A to point B, or provide them the information that would allow them to get from point A to point B. Erica, did you miss all that, or did you hear me?
Um, I missed some stuff. It looks like it froze. Um, I think I know what it is, and I think it was Teams on my computer being trying to load
Okay.
in the background.
Okay.
I have since killed it, so it looks like it's things might be moving a little
Okay.
better.
Okay. I think that gave you a hard time last time too. But I'm going to pause our video
Um,
for just a second so that I'll
yeah,
rehash
I
with you.
apologize. Be better. That should be better.
All right. So I'm
We
going to
should be good.
rehash with you, in essence, off camera, what I just said. And that
Yeah,
was,
my apologies.
that's okay. And that essentially was that the guide can serve one or two
Hmm.
roles or both. Either an actual physical, like tour guide, right? They can be like the tour guide of the city. They can be the tour guide
Helping take you to A to B.
to get you from point A to point B, or they can just be the guide to push the party along in terms of pacing.
Hmm.
Um, so they can have the local insights, the local law to share. In doing so, they can kind of create suspense and tension, depending what kind of campaign that it is. But
You can
that's
supply them with unique items too. Like
that
they might have interesting things in their pockets that should your party get stuck somewhere and are spending way too much time trying to find a way out of it, the NPC might have a tool or something that could help them get unstuck from a part of the story that maybe isn't super helpful.
still having problems with that video feed for you, Erica. But what Erica was just saying was the guide can be used to kind of push the party along with maybe giving them an item, a map, a tool, something to kind of push them along. But that I think for me, from my notes, is a little different because the next archetype I have is the advancement. So that might be what we're
Hmm.
talking about here. So we're kind of transitioning from the guide to the advancer or the advancement NPC to kind of
So this
advance
is
the
Sorry, I
the
ordered a
campaign
beverage.
along.
I don't think I'm allowed back outside with it. Oh, wait, there might be a different outside. No, I don't think I'm allowed back outside. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so
So
the
I will
random
be all
voice, if
audio. I'm
anyone's hearing
sorry.
that, is Julie, who doesn't have her video feed on. So for the moment,
Nope.
I was gonna mute her, but okay. Um,
Really?
so the advance,
Sorry.
no, that's okay, that's okay. So the advancement title, if you will, um, is more plot driven in terms of pushing the plot forward. Not so again beyond
Mhm.
pacing, right? Actually pushing the plot forward. Hey, you guys need to go take care of this task. You were retained. You were hired to provide safe transit from for this guy to point A to point B. You were hired to go find this item. There's bad shit going on in that city. You need to go figure it out and put it to rest. Whatever it is. So the advancement archetype is there to kind of push the story along, right? Not just pacing, push the story along.
Mhm.
And
So they
they
might have more information
correct,
or
yeah.
have a
So
clue to
more
a
more
puzzle that you can
plot
work in on
based,
there.
right? More plot based, a story based information as to that specific campaign, right? Where I
A
think that
lore
Right.
drop.
a little bit of a law drop, maybe,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
That's a wardrobe.
And it kind of gets
I
them,
have a couple
and it
NPCs that
kind of
are
can
like
get
that.
the players to kind of refocus, right? So if they're getting distracted, and Sunday night is a good example because I gave the ladies too many pieces at once, too many little tidbits at once, and they didn't know which way to go. Right? There's an anti-paladin, there's an evil cleric, there's a powerful magic user, yada yada yada, and they didn't know which way to go. So then, I can use an NPC for the advancement to kind of reel them back in and say, hey, this is really what you're supposed to be doing, or focus on this first, and then you can worry about other things. So that's an example of how you'd use the advancement archetype. But like Julie said, to supply additional information, supply some lore,
Yeah.
LORE, as to what the party's supposed to be doing.
Mhm. And maybe an NPC shows up to clarify, like
Yeah, maybe they're
if they
really
are lost.
confused and they have it all wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
Then you've got an NPC that shows up and is like, "Hey, you know where I'm going? It's a great place."
So, and
I
again,
thought it was bad,
and
but
that
it's not.
a good example still again with that, Erica, is Sunday night, right? So we're playing the classic, the Keep on the Borderlands in the caves of chaos, and I've added my own flavor in there because it's pretty. The module as written is
It needs it.
it's pretty bland. It's very kind of sandboxy in a sense. So we added flavor that the Caves of Chaos is called the Valley of the Day Rain. It rains all the time. Whenever it's daytime, it rains. Just to make it a little different, right? Add a little flavor. Oh, you guys are getting soaked. Oh my God, it's so you guys are drenched to the bone. And so, okay, but then they raise the question of why. Why is it the Valley of the Day Rain? Why does this happen? Well, because they learned there's an evil magic user who casts some sort of powerful magic on the valley. Okay, why? Well, because it's acting as a deterrent for people going into the caves who aren't supposed to be
Oh,
there.
ignore me. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's one thing. Then they hear about an evil paladin or an anti-paladin, right?
Hmm.
So evil, and then they heard about the evil cleric who's in the caves. So maybe those two are working together. Maybe all three are working together. But what's the real
In my head, I
focus?
was like, maybe they're the same person.
And maybe they're all the same, or maybe
Yeah.
two of them are the same. But what's the purpose of the module? Well, like, what's the goal of the local law? And that is to go into the caves, essentially clear out the caves, to hack and slash dungeon crawl, classic 1E, and be done. But I told them these three or four different things, and then like Erica said, well, are they one and the same? Are they all the same? Are they correlated at all? Are they coincident?
And I
So
will mention, this Sunday night group does not dungeon crawl, not standard dungeon crawl. They do like a 3-to-1 session of shopping, role play, adventure, exploration, and then maybe some accidental combat because they stumbled into something they shouldn't have.
so
Balance
But the whole
killer.
time we're all like,
Yeah.
we want to go kill stuff. Let's go kill stuff, and then we get distracted and we're like, oh, we're gonna hang out with TM, the provisioner for the next internet.
so like an advancement PC to kind of hone in or polish up all the information they have and kind of get them focused, would be a role for them, right? And now what doesn't these archetypes can overlap. So one NPC can serve multiple roles, right? Or their role can shift.
Multiple roles.
Or
Yeah.
you can have
Multiple
multiple
people.
NPCs that are acting as the guide or the advancement or the,
Yep.
the, the comic relief, right? So on Sunday,
And
they
that makes more sense because you wouldn't have the same universal guide for everything in the world, right?
well,
Like you would meet
correct.
new
No.
people to do new
Correct. Yeah,
things.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
kind of
But
homebrew
right, but
butler.
what you're referring to, though, Erica, I think is like town to town. You'd have different, right? But even within that one
Yeah.
town, so even within the keep of the keep on the Borderlands, there could be multiple that can act as the advancement to kind of keep you guys focused on what you're supposed to be, And one of them so far has been Fensa, a little bit, the local barkeep, the tavern keeper. And I think you might get
Oh, the
a little bit of
great place.
information from the
You
provisioner
did,
guy,
yeah.
right? So it doesn't have to be restricted to just one NPC that serves this one role.
Or one location.
Right.
You can have
They can
multiple
do
that
they can wear
serve
a
that
lot of hats.
role, and one NPC can have multiple roles. And that multiple
Yeah.
role, if they're multi-rolled, multi-class, multi-rolled, that can be simultaneous, or it can shift. They can start as the comic relief, and they can shift over to the advancement because as the party interacts with them, they learn more about that NPC. And they
So you
started
have
out,
comic relief as its own type of
yeah, yeah.
NPC.
I mean, that's the last on my list, but yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
fun.
So, um, then my next one that I have here is the rival. Okay, now the
Mm.
rival doesn't necessarily have to be the big bad evil guy, but
No,
they're
no.
a competitor, right? So maybe it's truly a competitor. Maybe the party Tuesdays is heading out to the farming village of Orlane
Oh,
to solve
someone
the
in the same.
mystery, right? And while they were there, they encountered or learned of two elves that have taken residence in the town to kind of check out what's going on as well, right? So they weren't technically rivals, but from the perspective of the players, they definitely kind of appeared as though they could be a rival. And that can either.
This also helps. Sorry, I did not mean to
That's okay. No,
interrupt
no,
you.
go ahead. Go ahead. I talk too much. Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say it helps the characters who are doing the exploration have a mirror on how close or how far off they are by watching what their rivals do. right? So the rival using a rival is a great way to be like, well, these guys are off
I
here going to do this. It sets up a bit of competition that says you might also want to come over here and do this. It
think
functions almost as a guide too, in its way.
Yeah, so a motivator of sorts. I think a motivator
Hmm.
more than a
yeah.
guide because it's the competitor. Now that competition can be working together, or like you were alluding, hey, they going over there. Do they know something we don't? Maybe we should go check that out as well. Or if the party knows enough already, they're going over there. Let's see if we can do something to beat them to the punch.
It also, I just thought of this. One of the neat things that it sets up too is the DM now has an opportunity to show the group a snapshot of what they look like through another set of eyes. So let's say, for example,
Yeah.
you've been role playing for a while, and in the DM's head, they are seeing this as a very famous adventuring party. Everyone knows who they are, but maybe the players don't feel that way. So a great way to flesh that out is by having an NPC that shows up and talks to them like they're famous. Like, oh, can I get your order? Like it's a mirror to what the party should be seeing in themselves. Like, and we actually get this on Sundays in terms of we have, these people who are working for a very important person who see us out there and they think little of us. They are like, what are you plebes doing
Yup.
here? Why are you out here at all? And what that does is it tells me I'm not that special here. That
Yeah.
which I want to be. I'm
It's a
low level.
bummer.
I'm learning. This is part of it. But it's a mirror. It shows me I'm not the badass thief that I want to be soon. This is where I am now. I'm not that strong
Kind
here.
of like
And
it's
go
kind of
ahead.
like and this is a little niche. This is a little like anime niche. If anyone's ever watched like Naruto, like how
Oh yeah.
Konohamaru is to Naruto, he wants to
Hmm.
like be the biggest and the best and the greatest, but he's a little kid. He's like a 10-year-old,
Yep.
and the main character is like in his teens. He's accomplished and he's done some stuff. And this little kid comes up to him and runs up to him and tells him that he's better than him. But he's a little
Yeah.
10-year-old.
Yep.
Yeah,
So the NPCs are
that's
a
what that
great way
reminds.
to show you where you stand.
Me.
Yeah, and you're not wrong in that, Erica,
Yeah,
because professional adventurers, your characters are, yes. And I kind of often will say, like, you're the James Bond, jack of all trades. You're awesome at all kinds, at everything. But you're not the only adventuring party out there, right? You're not the
Oh
only
no, and
professional
we're
adventurers.
still pretty low level, so I
Yeah.
don't expect to
Um,
be
yeah, you're still level
that
so
2 or level
impressive.
3.
so that
Yeah, so
Yeah,
kind of,
in
and even though it
realism,
may not be truly a rivalry, like you said, it's kind of we need to check ourselves here, as to where are we really in the pecking order, but and a rival or a competitor will certainly do that, regardless of whether you're down bottom or you're up top. Is going to kind of give you a barometer, if you will, of where you really lie. But usually, a rival is going to be friendly in terms of our NPCs. They're not out to kill you. They're your rival. They just want to beat you to the punch, right? Of whatever that is. So it kind of motivates the characters to do better, to be better, to excel and progress, right?
and
Because
it gives them a target for when they want or
it,
need more
it
information
creates goals,
because they
right?
know that person has a similar goal. They're someone that I would want to interact with if I had a sneaky way of trying to get the information. They can serve multiple facets in that way.
I agree. I agree. Next on my list, hang on, let me go back and look at this here. All right, next on my list is the mentor.
Mm, oh,
So
yep.
the mentor, I think, is similar to
more so.
The guide.
the
Right.
advancement or the guide, almost like a
Mm,
mashup of
yep.
the guide and the advancement, where it becomes more of a direct link, if you will, between the DM and the players. Okay, so almost a little more personal, if you will, on the DM side, that will have the really the true answers for the players. And again, just because the NPC has all the answers, because they are the DM has all the answers, right? It does mean it needs to be disclosed. Okay, so let me just kind of say that here before we press forward on this mentor. And if you notice, I'm always looking to my right because I'm looking at my other monitor that kind of has my notes on the matter. It's not that I'm not. Anyway, um, so the NPC
I'm
of the
not telling
mentor, um, right? Just like a mentor in real life, they have more experience than you. They have more knowledge. They have more wisdom. That's why they're acting as the mentor for you, right?
So they
Um,
might not know about your particular goals in the plot, but they know about your class or they know about your race or your
level.
species. They know about, yeah, how to progress individually. Is that what you mean?
well, yes, but I think more
Well,
so that they know
yeah.
what's going on there in town. They know what's going
Mhm.
on, in the region. So that they have the answers for that. As an example, a mentor here in the keep, they would know perhaps what's going on with this anti-paladin, if it's really a thing or not, or if the anti-paladin is one and the same with the evil cleric. Maybe they would know where the evil cleric is likely to be found. They might know about that mad hermit that's off in the woods. They might know a little more about that, or in that direction versus your race, your class, because that I think is more of a knowledge base, an academic knowledge base, intelligence versus wisdom. So I think the
Mhm.
mentor is more of a wisdom thing, wise, right? Having experience, and while with experience does come knowledge, but not just textbook. It's more of a locality thing. Whereas the sage, if you will, the student, the one who studies, that's the one who's going to know all the small nuances of your race and your class, or maybe the town where you came from hundreds of miles away because they've read about it or they've heard about it. Whereas the mentor, um, knowing what's going on, knowing why you're there, can kind of answer those questions for you, and kind of get you guys to work together and kind of get you headed in the right direction.
Okay, so the way I see the difference now between the guide and the advancement archetypes and the mentor type is that the guide is actually kind of speaking through a fourth wall to the players, right? Whereas the mentor is kind of acting directly on the characters, not the players. The mentor is saying, "Hey, character, here's how we get better," whereas the guide is secretly saying, "Hey, player, here's where we should go."
Right. I think that's
Is kind
fair.
of the
I think
difference.
that's fair to kind of liken it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. The other useful thing that those guides, those fourth wall breaking capability guides can do too is, especially if you're in a long campaign, and especially if you're in a campaign that is very typical in that it doesn't get to meet as often as it would love to. Um, People are going to forget small details that the DM might not want them to forget. And the NPC can be a perfect place to store those details or a great place to remind the group of important things that the players might have forgotten, but the characters wouldn't have, right? Like the characters would have known this is important, even if the player didn't write it down or the player didn't remember. The NPC has that opportunity to bring it back to life, and you can pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and I think that what you're describing there could kind of fall under either the advancement or the mentor profile.
Hmm.
Depending how
Yeah.
it's used. And before we kind of continue on here with the last few that I have, let's not forget that when you're creating an NPC or you're fleshing out an NPC, you don't have to give them a title like this. You don't have to classify them into an archetype. It may
Right.
help for the DM to do that, but you don't have to qualify. Just like you don't necessarily have to qualify your alignment upon character creation.
No, but it is a reason to have the NPCs accessible because you're going to need all of these tools eventually. And having an NPC prepared who could wear multiple hats to fill in these things makes it more
Oh yeah,
speedy.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not saying don't create the NPCs and don't have like a general idea of how you want to use them, as the DM, how you want to use that NPC, but don't feel the need to qualify them into one of these categories, and then
Right.
because then you don't want to feel confined. Is what I'm afraid may happen for some people. They're going to feel confined that, oh, he's this type, so therefore he can only do that. And just the same, I'll add as well. You don't have to have all of these NPCs in the game at the same time. They don't
Right.
all have to be there. That's too many. That's 6, 7, 8. That's too many. All you really should need is like 2 or 3 important NPCs. And like you were saying earlier, Erica, depending upon your group of players, that will kind of determine what type of NPC is going to suit the game best.
So think of it in terms of physics, right? Your characters are particles, and your NPCs are the the energy that's acting on the particles, right? That's
Hmm.
causing them to move. Um, they know how to react, how strongly to react, how not strongly to react, because they have that source that they're bouncing off of. Without it, without the NPCs, the players have no way to interact with their world.
Correct. Correct. And in its simplest form, the NPCs are the guide in
Hmm.
its simplest form. Because, like you said, without that interaction, then they're one among a million. Well, and they kind of sort of are, but if they have no interaction, then essentially they're the only one in the world, right?
They shape the
If
game
they don't
for them.
interact with the NPCs. So
Hmm. They set
it,
the tone of, where they are when they start talking to people. They know what the vibe is of the scene that they're in based on how people talk. If they're happy, if they're depressed, um, if they're sad, if they're grieving, if they're celebrating something, you know what environment you're walking into without having to describe as much as you otherwise would have to.
the next I get 3 more that like I have in my notes, and then I'll talk about a
Uh-huh.
couple of others that I just or were hearing about earlier, or yeah. And again, there's a lot of overlap, and not only is there overlap between these 7 or 8 that I have here, there's overlap between what other people will tell you, right? And
Oh yeah,
overlap
certainly.
because they're describing it this way, I'm describing it this way. I call it X, they call it Z. So it's the same but different titles, and that's why the title is not so important. But all this is just a guide, if you will, no pun intended on the guide archetype, just a guide for the DM to get a sense of what NPCs can be used for and how they should be used. So next one I have here,
And
what was the one I just said? What were we just talking about?
I was talking about physics, about the guide. I was talking about particle physics and how everything
Oh
reacts to
no, we
everything.
talk about the mentor. How the mentor is essentially is
Mental.
essentially is
Oh,
the
that's what we
DM,
left
right?
off.
Who kind of has all knowledge, kind of knows
Yeah.
everything. And not to say that that NPC is going to tell the players everything, because that kind of takes the fun out of the exploration, the social interactions, that aspect of role play. So don't tell them everything just because the NPC knows everything. Okay, a little bit
Right.
here, a little bit there, and never reveal everything. And sometimes, while they may know everything, maybe everything they know is not accurate. Maybe it's wrong.
That's true too.
Maybe it's wrong, and that creates for interesting challenges there as well. And when there's a problem, this I think the mentor should never provide the solution, right? Just like a mentor in real life, if they're mentoring you, they're not going to tell you what to do. They're not going to say, "Hey, Erica, this is the solution." You need to figure that out on your own with some guidance, right, from your mentor. But you need to figure that out on your own, and not for them to say, "This is what you need to do." Because at that point, they're really not being
Right.
a mentor.
That's not fun.
A mentor is there to guide you and teach you, right? And not to give you all the answers. When you go to school, they don't give you all the answers for the test. They say, here's the test. This is what we studied. And you got to figure it out from there. So the next one I have here is the long term one. So the long term, obviously, probably would not apply in your one shots because it's a one shot, right? Maybe in the concept of like an Adventures League where it's kind of a one shot, but they're all linked together, right?
Yep.
Or in our case, when we have more traditional longer campaigns where it be one module and a module and a module and a module in 1E, or a campaign in 5E. Maybe you have one NPC who, yeah, he was in this city, and holy crap, you ran into him down in this city too in the next module, right? Or maybe he actually travels with you just to get from point A to point B, and then he goes about his own way, but he's still there in town, right? So whatever it is, he she stays in contact with the party Because he likes the party. So you make
I would call
this
that
this
the
long term
anchor.
NPC kind of like the party. They get along, they play nice, everyone likes each other, and they
It's
encourage.
like the anchor
Yeah, an anchor,
NPC.
right? Well, an anchor, but not in
Yep.
the sense that it holds them back, but an anchor that
No, 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 no.
yeah,
It
not
brings
that
it,
kind of
it
anchor.
keeps it
Yeah,
all together. It's
it
an
congeals
emotional anchor.
together. It's the glue or the bond. Not so much for the party to stay together because they should already have that, but they kind
Right,
of
but it
pull
shows that
themselves
they're
into the party,
leaving,
so to speak.
and it does show that they're leaving an impact on their world. The players need to feel like they're impactful, right? Otherwise, what's the point of clearing this cave of goblins if we don't get anything from it? The town doesn't get anything from it. Like, what's the point? What's the purpose? And so having a long-term NPC who's seen your characters achieve things, um, is a great way of being like, you've done this, you've achieved this. I can now this NPC can now go to school because we've, cleared the school of the bad things, or this NPC can now go home to his family because a bridge that was broken. Like it allows you to see the effect of what your party is doing
Yes, yes,
on the
absolutely.
world.
You hit the nail on the head with that. That the actions, behaviors of the characters have rewards and consequences in their immediate surrounding, right? In the town, in the castle, whatever it is. But those that should be impact. I guess I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, they're not functioning in a vacuum.
It depends how you want to play your game. Okay, but nowadays people are very much into the world, the story, right? So working with the idea of the world and the story, what the characters do should have impact, not just right here, right now, but over here and over here and over here. Okay, while the further out you go, it might be less and less, like the ripple when you toss a coin or a stone into the pond. The further out the ripples go, the smaller that wave gets. But nonetheless, it will have a ripple effect. And by having the long-term NPC who kind of follows them, so to speak, it helps to reflect to the players the impact that they're having on the world, right? Good or bad,
Yeah.
big or small, and it solidifies, like you were describing, what they've actually done, and it makes a
Hmm.
difference, and therefore the players, man, are seeing the impact, so they might actually want to continue playing it and keep that character and further develop that character over months, over years, from one module to the next, one campaign to the next.
That character, you don't even have to always role play that character. You can have your party show up in a town, show up in a tavern, and just have them be known already because that character has been through that town before them and talked about them or raved about what they accomplished. So that when you do, or when your party arrives in a new area, that long-term NPC who's always in the background, who's, checking in on things, who you keep seeing, can be the one who sets you up already. Like you have a reputation already when you enter a city because they started talking about you or what have you. Or maybe they don't, but it's an option.
And I think that's a good example because the that NPC doesn't have to necessarily have direct interaction every time with the
Right.
characters. While we generally use NPCs that way, they can be active in the background, right? They can be support
Mhm.
staff, so to speak, like you said. So the long-term NPC, um, maybe not immediately to the next town that the party goes to, but maybe two or three towns ahead. Like you said, they get there and um, they go to the bar and they start a conversation with the barkeep, and the barkeep says, "Oh, you're so and so. Yeah, I was talking to your long-term NPC just last month, and he was talking about you guys, doing X, Y, Z." And that kind of I think solidifies things for the players, and it kind of
Yeah, it
motivates
helps
the
flesh out the world too.
players um, to keep playing those characters and keep developing them and seeing the impact that they have on the world, and it's not just a friggin' board game.
They're not in a vacuum.
Right.
They're not, functioning in a space that doesn't affect anything else. NPCs are a great way to show that butterfly effect, that ripple out into the next parts, and it helps them feel like there's a purpose to what they're doing. Right? They accomplished something and it meant something. So it's feels good. Get that dopamine hit.
All right, so I got two more like on my list, and I'll talk about a couple others that I was watching about this weekend. So next up is the support
Mhm.
NPC, the support role, the guy who operates kind of in the background, right? So this is the guy or the character, NPC, the character, who would handle the more mundane and forgotten tasks, right? So you go back to town, and my armor's broken. I need that fixed. My bowstring broke. I need a new bowstring. So obviously you can role play that out at the local supply store, the provisioner, whatever. Or you can have this guy here kind of helps you out and takes care of that stuff for you, um, kind of in the background.
Mhm.
And in doing that, that can help with pacing too, right? So for your one shots or games that you want to push forward for one reason or another, that can help with pacing because we don't need to social role play every little aspect, every little thing. Joe is going to take care of that for you guys for a couple copper pieces or a couple silver, whatever it might be, or maybe he just likes you and he's taking a
Yep.
liking to you guys and he's kind of doing it in hopes that you'll do something for him or reward him in some
And that
way.
actually is a much more recognized NPC archetype in the 5.5 E or 5.5 E or 2024 E, whatever we're calling it, because of the bastions, right? Because of the new bastion system, there's now an actual mechanic for having a hireling. NPC that does things for you while you are not able to do them. And what this does is it I think it helps free up the higher level players who are in need of more expensive things more frequently and don't want to do as much of the RP,
Hmm.
going back to the same village or what have you. So having a hireling that is able to solve a lot of those things for them while they're on the road, maybe they're a messenger, maybe they can come find them on the trail. Maybe they have a druid who uses a familiar constantly all the time, the same one that they can get to know. Yeah, there's lots of ways to keep that going and to use an NPC to do it.
And I think that it can be used to remind the players, and this is just my style of play, that there's a certain level of realism here, and there's a certain level of life does happen, right? And what I mean by that is, so the party comes back to their house or their hometown or whatever their home base is, and Joe shows up and says, "Hey guys, yep, I knew you guys were coming back in town, so I made sure I prepared this and this and this." So all the small things that when we're gaming, we don't really think about those small everyday the ADLs, right? Activities of daily living or activities of daily
Hmm.
life, that we forget about that. And if nothing else, when Joe comes in and just speaks this to them, it reminds the players that there's more to their characters than just their character sheet, right? And while we don't need
Right.
to social role play every little thing, this allows us to circumvent social role playing every single little element, but just reminds us that there there are these aspects of life that do happen, right? So it
Yep.
further supports that your character is real. They're a whole person.
They're
Um,
fleshed out
and
for
in
sure.
doing that, and in doing just saying, "Hey, Joe shows up and he tells you this. Hey, I took care of this stuff for you." It speeds the game. Like that helps with pacing, right? Because we don't have to social role play every little nuance of every little thing. Now, if your group likes that, then so be it. Then maybe you're not going to use one of these type characters. And again, because you don't need to use all of these, you don't need to use them all the time.
Right.
But it's a tool. It's one archetype of an NPC that can be used just to, if nothing else, to serve as a reminder to everyone that there's more to life than just going to the bar and going out and slaying dragons.
So we all have our favorite things.
All right, last one I have here on my list is the comic
Hmm.
relief that we kind of alluded to earlier.
Fun. Yep. Yep.
So, um,
I call it the Chaos Goblin.
Well, typically we use that though when we're talking about
It's often a
player
player.
characters. Yes, yes. So the comic relief can be just that. It can be something comical that this NPC does, almost like an entertainment value. It can be something silly, something stupid that they do. Again, more of an entertainment value to the players, to the characters. But it can also help reduce idiotic ideas that the players might come up with. Because the comic
Mhm.
relief guy might be kind of like the anti-comic relief. He says, "No, I mean, like that's just dumb idea.
We don't do that.
what are you thinking?" And says or does something to kind of distract or pull away from that. Now, your mentor and your guide, can also do something like that too. But the comic relief just might remind the players that that's a silly idea. In addition to
And maybe
being
the
the
story
court
got heavy.
jester, you know.
Sometimes in a campaign, stories can get heavy.
Yep, and you need to
You can
break
have
it
an
up.
emotionally
Yeah.
tense session that, makes people feel a little on edge about continuing. You want to be able to end the session with something comfortable that makes people want to come back. So throwing comic relief at the end to leave a better taste in people's mouths before they leave can be a great way of doing that. Comic relief is almost always welcome. I know there are probably some more crunchy players who are like, oh, that's a waste of time. But I like comic
But
relief. I think it makes
it
the game
helps to
more
lighten the
game-like.
mood. Like you said, if it's been
Yeah.
very heavy and it's been combat session after session, you need to change the pace a little bit sometimes. You need to change the flavor a little bit. I mean, I like having a good steak, but I don't want to eat steak every single day, right? Or I don't want to have
Yeah, right.
steak, hamburger, and and the same protein every single day. I need to mix it up. So the comic relief can kind of come in for just 5, 10 minutes of social role play or one whole session, whatever it is, and then just completely dip out, right? So it helps, like you said, to kind of like lighten the mood, I think, a little bit. Kind of perhaps remind the players as well that they're being silly. It can be like I said, like
Hmm.
the anti-comic relief in that sense. Um, and in doing that, kind of guide the by default. If you know what the bad ideas are, you kind of get a sense of what the good ideas are.
Yeah.
So,
Um, the only other one that was thinking of that I think actually could be divided into multiple pieces and then placed among guide, advance, and probably mentor is I will often have an NPC that is considered like the holder of the lore, right? Like it's not one NPC, it's an NPC in wherever we go. But it would be the one who has information. So it's
I'm thinking,
likely the advancement one,
or,
like the
or
because
maybe
I
the
picture it like
the mentor. I'm thinking.
yeah, so it would be the individual that they would look for to gain more plot-based
Mm-hmm.
information. Um,
Mentor. Yep. Yep.
that yeah, so like in my head I picture lore master, but that would be pieces of these things. Um,
Yeah. Maybe advancement. Yeah. Again, I mean,
the
these
other
are just labels what we're giving to these NPCs. It's
yeah, they're not individual
No, I mean,
NPCs.
it's what's more important is the functionality or and how the NPCs are used. Again, like I said earlier, regardless of how you label them. But based on what we were talking earlier or tonight, I would say either advancement, like you said, or maybe mentor, depending on how much law this is or how broad the law is, right? So if it's very broad, that might be more the mentor. If it's more focused, like you said, localized, then that might be the advancement um, classification.
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the seven that I cited are guide, advancement, rival, mentor, long term, the support, and comic relief. Those are the seven that I have cited here. And when we're off camera, I will cite for you my source, if you will, because I have
Oh, cool.
not kind of pooled all this together. I took it from one source because I thought he did a great job and I liked it. But more recently, I was looking at Stephanie. I think her channel is called Stephanie Plays Games. I believe it is. And she identified a few different ones by title, a few different ones. The first one that I noted here from her was the title of hero. Now, the
Hmm.
hero she was describing was really more like an ally. Okay, so for what we were talking about, it might be like a rival because the rival is not an opponent, not a bad guy, but they're going to push you forward. They're going to compete for you, like a hero might do because they are like you, right? She gave the example, and I don't know this, but she gave the example of in Curse of Strahd, if anyone's familiar with that, that the hero would be Irina.
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Then she mentioned the mentor, as did we. And in Curse of Strahd, she said that was Van Ricken. Van Riken.
Hmm.
Okay. She mentioned the herald, not the town
Oh
crier
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
herald, but the herald to to I think to share information with the party. So for what we were talking about, that might be the advancement, if it's kind of
Hmm.
localized, or the mentor if it's a longer, broader concept. She mentioned about the threshold guardian. I don't have notes on that. She mentioned about the shape shifter. Now again, this doesn't necessarily
Ooh.
mean like a doppelganger. That's not what
No,
we're
no,
talking about.
no.
And
The
she said
dexterous
she
one.
used it to create doubt in the players as to their
Mm.
intentions, right? So the shapeshifter might be a local friend, a local guide, the local shopkeeper, whatever it is. And today he tells you yada 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 dragon, and then tomorrow he tells you the same thing yada 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 chimera. Hmm.
The red herring. Yes,
Yeah.
Julie.
So
That's perfect.
yeah. So like, is it like you said? Is it a red herring? Does he know what he's talking about and he got confused as to what the end result was? Is it the dragon or is it the chimera? Or
Maybe they have ulterior motives.
right. So that's the shapeshifter, right? So the story might change a little bit. It might be a little misleading. It might be a little bit accurate. It might be a little bit of both. Kind of, and that can kind of help create plot twists as well. But give just enough information to the players where, without giving them too much, where they get to make their own kind of informed slash misinformed decision as
Yeah.
to what they want to do with this information. It could be as simple as overhearing a conversation wherever. Of course, we always talk about the tavern, right? Stereotypical. So they're at the tavern, and the party overhears the guys over there talking about XYZ. They overhear the conversation. Or maybe they find a letter, or a letter is delivered to them directly with this information. So that's the shape shifter. It can be through some repetitive storytelling that story might shift or the information might shift. Maybe accurate, maybe inaccurate. It might be a red herring, or maybe not. So that
And they
those.
might have biases.
Oh yeah,
Your NPCs are going to be biased.
absolutely, absolutely. If you're developing good NPCs, like I said, they're going to have their own motivation, which is what you're alluding to. With a bias, a bias comes from our own personal motivations and our beliefs. So that can be integrated into your NPC. If you flesh out that NPC enough, it's important enough to do that. I don't think I would do that for every NPC, but yeah, definitely kind of on my radar. And the last one I have noted from speaking with her or watching her video was the villain, which is different than a
Ah,
rival, right? It's the villain, it's the
yeah,
bad
yeah,
guy, and it
yeah.
doesn't necessarily need to be the big bad evil guy, but it's the bad guy in town. He's the one who runs the organized crime ring or whatever, right? He's the bad guy, but in his mind, of course, he's probably not the bad guy. In his mind, he's doing just
Right,
fine,
right.
you know.
He's the foil.
So that was the six from her: hero, herald, mentor, threshold guardian, shapeshifter, and villain.
So the archetypes are just different flavors of functions, essentially.
Yeah,
Like when it comes to an NPC, I think they fall into like mirror is going to show you what's happening, what's coming, the view from the perspective of the player. You have the foils, your NPC foils. These are here to challenge you. They're going to probably be the shapeshifter. They're going to provide competition or something that motivates you. And then the anchor. The anchors are, the ones that you see all the time. You know that they're safe to interact with. They're consistent. They show up all the time. So the archetypes fall into like a, are they helping out the party? Are they helping out the characters? Are they helping out like the characters, the players, or are they
Kind of helping out the story.
consistent?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Player, character,
The
story kind of
backbone.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because each of them are
um,
feeding
I had a thought in there.
something in that.
Oh, so and I said this earlier. I want to emphasize this again because I think it's important that this comes down to prep. It's important to prep your NPCs because that makes for a smoother game and adds real flavor to the game. Okay, because travel is one thing, exploration is one thing, combat is one thing, but those social interactions, it doesn't matter how much emphasis you put on it, those can be
They're emotional
so
landmarks.
they can be so flavorful and so important depending what you do here with the NPCs. But prepping those NPCs is just as important as prepping any other component of your prep. And then what's nice about it though is once you have that character prepped, that's good for however long you need them to be there. So it's not I need to review, I need to do this every week for my game or every other week, whatever the case may be. Once you kind of have that done, it's established, and it's you put it to the side and you pull it out when you need it. And then with your weekly prep or your however frequently. Then with your weekly prep, you review that because you think the party's going to interact with this NPC, and I'm going to review what his role is. I'm going to review that personality, and I'm going to consider what that interaction would be. And Julie and I had talked
Mhm.
about that one time before. How do you prep for social interaction? Well, here's one of the cases where you prep for social interaction. If I have the mentor who kind of knows everything that's going on, what is he willing to share, or what do I need that NPC to share if the characters are smart enough to ask the right questions? What will he share without sharing too much, right? If they don't ask the right questions, then they're not going to get the information anyway. But I need
Right.
to kind of draw those boundaries, and that comes into social interaction prep. I remember when I first brought that up, Julie's like, "What are you talking about? How do you prep for social interaction?"
Oh,
Well,
well, who they interact with.
you got to anticipate what that conversation might be. More importantly, as the DM in prepping for your NPCs, what am I willing to share with the characters to keep the story going, to add a little flavor, to add a distraction, whatever it is that the party needs and whatever it is that I need to continue to support making a fun and flavorful game that we all
Hmm.
enjoy. Social prep. It's a real thing.
Social prep.
Yep, it's a real
Prep your
thing.
NPCs.
Or prepping for social, it's a real thing. So, all right, Erica, that's
Players
all
remember
that
the
I
emotional
have.
aspects.
That is my 60 minutes of nonstop talking about NPCs. Anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to ask? Because I know you like to take notes, and you DM much more than we do.
I think the only thing I would add that we didn't really bring up at all is, especially if you're playing with lower level characters, always know what's in your NPC's pockets. Always, at all times. Not just their names, but what the heck is in their pockets. Because if they are not yet established as a recognizable, reoccurring NPC in a low level party, the rogue or thief sometimes can't help themselves. And yeah, knowing what they have on them is important.
Now, I will say that's also an opportunity, perhaps, to push the story along or distract, like depending what's in the pocket, that can be used by the DM in so many different ways, right? Because what they
Yeah.
find could be a couple coins. Okay, so they find a few coins.
Mm,
They could find a key
a
or a set of
note.
keys that the party really could use. Okay, but what's in their pocket needs to be germane to that character. Okay, so if they have the local farmer who's at the bar and they run into this guy every day at dinner time because the farmer's there for dinner every day, and he's just the comic relief guy, he's probably not going to have a set of keys to the dungeon, even though you really
Probably
want the
not.
party to find that, right?
Yeah.
So, no, like what you're saying, knowing what's in their pockets or having an idea for that is fine, but it has to be relevant. It has to be kind of leveled, so to speak. But if it's not that important of an NPC, then they're probably not going to have anything that's of importance. And what's in their pocket is probably going to be relative to their title or their profession, right? So if I'm an
Mhm.
aristocrat and you decide to pick my pocket, or the aristocrat drops it, he's probably going to drop or have something of value, mundane or magical. If it's the local farmer, man, you'd be lucky if that guy has a copper piece in his pocket, right? Or
Right.
just enough to pay for dinner. So,
But he might have a note. He might have
right, that's what
information.
I'm saying.
He might know
So
how to
it
scout.
depends, but that needs to be relative to the character, not
Yep.
just the type of NPC, but to that NPC, what he does for a job or whatever, right? But
The other
it depends how good you are at storytelling, right? Because maybe the farmer does have that note from the castellan and the party
and
finds this
why
lead
would
now. Now,
he,
why
right?
does
Like
he
that makes
have
it
it?
interesting.
Well, that's on the DM to kind of figure that out or come up with a reason,
Yeah.
you know.
The other aspect of NPCs that we didn't really talk
But that
about
comes into
that
prep.
I think of that I use is I control the emotion of the table when I'm DMing through my NPCs. So I alluded to it a little bit when I said like the comic relief can help take a heavy note and bring it back to cheery. The other thing that I like to do, especially in one shots or if I'm at a convention running an Adventure League game, they're at my table for 2 hours, 3 hours maybe, and I want them to have a phenomenal time. If I get the feeling like there isn't a mesh of personalities that is allowing for things like player support or cheering each other on, I will put an NPC in there that will cheer on the players or, hooray at a natural 20. Or if someone does a particularly large amount of damage, the NPC could say something like, "Did you see that head go rolling? That's amazing." Like it, if you don't have the agency to have a naturally well high chemistry party table, but you want your players to walk away having had a good time, I will input those personalities and those sort of energy controlling things into my NPCs so that if I wanted to, I can make the table have a scarier tone by having a scared NPC, or I can want a more celebrative tone by having very, cheery, happy cheerleader style NPCs. They sort of are how I control the weather of the game and the table and people's moods. If I notice someone is a little quiet, I can send a really energetic NPC over there to see if I can draw them that character out and get them involved. So it's almost like a way of using. I use my NPCs as tools, as a DM tool. Obviously, these archetypes are all solving problems, but they are how I control my game, right? These are the levers you pull. Your NPCs. Those are the levers your characters can pull. They're the interaction points. They're the place that they talk to the DM and the DM talks back, or should if you're doing it, in table. So it is the interaction point, and so having your NPCs completely fleshed out, ready to go as part of your world, it makes this all the sessions more immersive.
Yeah, I agree. I got a few thoughts in there. One, to your last statement, all these NPCs we're talking about, they don't all need to be fleshed out from the beginning.
No,
You can kind of do one as the story progresses. You can kind of figure out who these NPCs are going to be or why you need them, and therefore flesh them out kind of as you go along in your prep. Um, a little bit of a sidestep. Um, Keeping your players engaged, keeping them exciting, having fun with it. Yes, that can be done through NPCs, but that can also be done through the storytelling aspect, how the DM describes things, what kind of emotion does the DM put into describing that, okay?
hmm
And I claim to be a master at none of these skills, okay, that we talk about. I don't,
jack of all trades, master of none.
yeah, I don't think that I am.
That's me too.
Um, but I remember a few sessions ago playing with Erica on Sunday night. She was so enthralled, where she's like holding her stuff. She really astutely watching and listening. She was all enthralled
I like
how
storytelling.
I was describing stuff, right? That theater of the mind, and she was all into it. Was I doing that fantastic of a job? I don't think so, but it was enough to get her attention, hold
You
it.
might have just been
because
in the
because
pocket.
because the way I was describing things in that moment, the emotion and the vocal tones I was using, it created that flavor. So it doesn't have to be just through NPCs. It can be how the DM describes things, and that kind of dovetails to what we finished with last time we chatted about how do I draw their attention to the chest? How do you describe
Mhm.
it? I had a third thought in here and I lost it because I've been talking too long.
We
Um,
covered a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. But it was kind of third thing in response to what you were just finishing up. NPC. I don't know. So I'm gonna go with I don't know. So,
Yeah, it's all right.
all right. So that's what we got for NPCs.
Very cool.
I wish they would come back to me. Okay.
I
So at the very
wish we had
least,
you a little bit more, Julie. Next time.
you need a name, a stat block or slash a role. Like, what is this? What is the purpose of this NPC? You want to be ready with their appearance, their personality, and perhaps something just a little more, whether that be motivation or the little bit of information they have or the purpose that they're going to have
What's in
for
their
you
pocket?
and for the party. What do you say? Stat block?
I said, what's in their pocket?
Oh, what's in their pocket?
What's in their
Um,
pocket?
okay, so to that point though, like for me, I'm going to wing it in the moment. I'm going to wing it in their pocket. I want to say, well, he's a farmer, so he might have a couple coins. He might have a nail. He might, but if it's going to be something
If
of
it was an NPC you knew, though, was
right.
holding
So
something, you'd prep that.
if I need it, if I need this object, picking pockets, then like I'm already going to have prepped that, right? So
Hmm.
then at that point, I'm going to know what's in that NPC's pockets because I'm implanting it. I'm planting it with a specific hope that the party does this, right?
Hmm.
That he picks the pocket. But maybe they don't, and then I got to figure out a way to get them this information otherwise. Um, but I'm only going to do that if I'm prepping for that specific purpose, right? Otherwise, that NPC is not going to have that item. So I don't need to worry about it. So I understand what Eric is saying. Be aware of what's in their pockets. But I think in the prep, be aware what's in their pocket if you need something to be in their pocket.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on that. Okay. On that note, we can wrap it up unless you have anything else to contribute here in closing.
Just that making NPCs is a fun way for DMs to still get to make characters.
Oh yes, because that's the agency of the DM. That's how the DM gets to play. Really,
Yeah.
that's how the DM plays is with the NPCs. So please interact with your NPCs, even if it's just a little bit
Please
here, a
do.
little bit there.
Just a
Interact
little.
with the
I want to play
NPCs.
too.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
want to
be a
play too.
grouchy
I don't want it to be
tavern
just
person.
rolling dice and keeping accounting. Um,
No, I
and
want to give
while
sass.
I like my combat, I really do tactical combat. Having some social role play helps. If anything else, like we said, it breaks things up, breaks up the monotony, and it keeps us the variety, keeps the flavor, and it allows the DM to really. Oh, that's what I was going to say. It allows the DM to really play. So let's not underestimate social role play during combat.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
what do I mean
Oh
by that?
God.
Okay, during combat, you, the player character, the good guy, is fighting against the bad guy. You're trying to kill the bad guy. Okay, maybe you're trying to subdue, but anyway, you're fighting against the bad guy. They too see you as the bad guy, and they're fighting for their life too. Okay, but it doesn't just have to be roll you hit, roll you miss, roll you hit, roll for damage. It doesn't have to be just that. You can put some social role play in there. I don't mean just descriptors where the player or the DM describes how the sword came down, slashed him over here, severed it, whatever it might be. No, no. During combat, the player characters and the NPCs are allowed to talk. Okay?
Hmm.
The NPC, the bad guy, the monster, can say something to the characters during combat. Get out of here. Ha ha ha. You
Trash
suck
talk.
after you rolled a nat 1 or
So
something.
much trash talk.
Whatever it is. So there's an opportunity for social role play during combat. And I think too often, myself included, we overlook that or we forget about it and don't utilize that. Is it going to have is it going to be a game changer? Probably not, but it's going to inject some flavor into the game and keep things
Fun.
interesting and fun for people. Okay, especially with like Erica doing her one shots for paid events or charity events for which people are paying to play. They want to have a good time, right? They want to have that fun. in this amount of
Mhm.
time. She's restricted, right? Whereas me, okay, well, yeah, we didn't have a fun time in combat this week, but I'm going to have next week and the week after that, and we're going to have social role play, and I got the week after that. So it's a longer campaign for us. So if we don't have a session that's not super exciting and super fun, I have next week.
Yeah.
We'll have a good time next week, right? And not because not every session is going to be great. Not every session is going to be, oh my god, that was awesome. I had so much fun. Sometimes like,
Yeah.
that was all right. And I say that as the DM too. Some of my sessions like, that was all right. I was like, that was kind of
We survived.
boring. Oh my god, that was awesome. So the breadth of emotion of enjoyment will fluctuate, but in that one shot that I'm paying for, yeah, man, I want to freaking have a good time. So
Yeah.
add me that flavor. Add me that flavor. Keep it exciting for me. So, and of course, the bulk of that burden is on the DM. Helps to have good players too who can play along, but most people, I shouldn't say most, I think a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, Erica, a lot of people who are going to your one shots are kind of new, and
About
therefore
40%.
we need to create that kind of fun environment for them because they don't really know, much about it. And if they're doing one shots, they may not even understand what a full campaign is week after week after week
Yeah.
after
At
week.
San Diego Comic-Con, DMing at San Diego Comic-Con, our players are 40% brand new. Is the rate of brand new players. We will have two tables that are learn to plays. They're half hour quick so that you can do a quick table and then get into a tier one game pretty quickly. But every year, the growth of new players is incredible.
Julie, since you have rejoined us,
Hi.
or at least on
Sorry.
video, we have essentially I'm not sure where where you really fell off, but we have wrapped up our different archetypes
Sorry.
of NPCs. We were just kind of tying up some loose ends, so to speak. So, is there anything that you'd like to inject here? Your thoughts on NPCs in any way, shape, or form?
I really like again, like what Erica was saying, the weather of the game. I really dug that because it kind of for us as DMs is it's kind of our own little like weather ecosystem, and we have to balance that ecosystem. And whether that be an interjected like NPC giving a random point of interjection, or that's a long-term NPC that's with the party for a duration of time, giving extended information and extended lore drops and guiding players in the right direction. I've had an extended PC because that's what my whole campaign is kind of based off of is this one NPC being like targeted by my big bad evil guy. And I have to like keep the NPC like in the party somehow. And I have to keep her like viable to the players. So I have to keep them hooked to this one NPC. And that, like what you were saying with like a mentor or a rival, where they're kind of with the NPC, I mean, with the player characters, like often enough to stay relevant and for them to remember who they are, kind of deal, where that like affects that little ecosystem. So where you're playing with that little ecosystem bubble to try and like maintain that homeostasis, to try and keep everybody going along the right path and not veering from tangents, and when they do inevitably veer from tangents, bringing them back together with another or a different NPC with a different focus, or the big bad evil guy, even bringing them back to center, bringing them back to tangent, to try and help them maintain that directional sense is definitely important for maintaining that kind of flow for the game.
All right, and
Yep, agreed.
on that note, I want to stop. You're going to wrap it up. I want to stop recording. I have a couple of thoughts I'll share, but we're going to stop recording our Rule for Mastery video, co-hosted with
Thanks for
Julie
coming.
and guest appearing with Erica Martin of Erica Martin Publishing. And we'll see you all next time.